Hi, I'm Dave Snodgrass, and welcome to Table Ready Gaming. On today's episode, we're going to be making a unique homebrewed monster. Now, I say that as in this monster is not my idea, but one I have seen around and thought it would be a really easy conversion and a really simple way to show something that's not typically in the monster manual. Today, we're making the Blood Elemental. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is remove the mold lines. Talked about this in previous videos, but mold lines are basically just seams and two-part molds where the fill medium kind of leaks out between the mold as they make it. Most of your plastic, resin, pewter, pretty much any model is going to have these if they're a two-part mold. Anyhow, these mold lines are really easy to remove off of this clear plastic. All you got to do is just get an X-Acto blade and start running the blade along the mold line. On the water elemental, the arm is really noticeable. So after removing the mold lines, we're going to go ahead and cut the head off of this miniature. We're going to replace it with something a little bit more sinister, as this is a blood elemental, and I felt like something more evil and death-like was needed. So to do that, I just used my plastic clippers and just kind of carved away at the plastic. This isn't the easiest stuff to cut, and it's not the cleanest, but once you get the big chunks cleared off, you can then come back in with a file and as we're going to do right here, and file away some of the excess plastic that's left over from the clippers. And that should get you a nice, smooth, flat surface to then attach the new head onto. So we're going to use the Citadel skull to find a new head. So I decided to just use a human skull off the Citadel skull set. Again, because it's a plastic model, this skull does have a few mold lines. So since this is a little bit smaller in detail, and it's a little bit more of a fiddly bit, I didn't want to risk cutting myself with my X-Acto blade, so I'm going to just use a file to remove the top of the mold line that runs along basically the top of the skull and along the sides. This is a really easy process, it should just take no time at all. Right, so once we get the mold line filed off, the next thing we're going to do is take our plastic clippers and we're going to want to cut a flat back to the skull. So basically the back half of the skull, we're just going to go ahead and cut that off. Very similar to how we did it with the water elemental. Again, this is a fiddly bit, so just be careful not to cut yourself, and make sure you have a secure grip on this so it doesn't go flying off into oblivion, never to be seen again. If you have to too, you can also use your files to make a nice clean flat back for it. I believe I had to do that a little bit too, just didn't take any video of it. So once we get our miniatures ready, that's what our body should look like and our tiny little head right there. So then we're just going to take some super glue and glue the skull onto the body, and this is just that gel super glue that I've used in past videos. I'll link to it down below if you want to pick some up yourself, but it's the Gorilla Glue gel glue. It's great. So the next part, we're going to have to make a transition between the plastic skull and the body of the miniature. And to do that, we're just going to sculpt it with some green stuff. And again, this is just a two-part sculpting medium. It comes with a blue and a yellow. You just mix those together and you get a nice consistent green throughout. And once you do that, you should be ready to sculpt any sort of detail work onto your miniature. So when you're done mixing, that's about the consistency of what your green stuff should look like. Nice, even, clear green. You don't want to see any blue streaks or yellow streaks through it. I'm just going to cut a bit off here and start sculpting. So the first thing we want to do is just roll a nice sausage. And we're going to go ahead and make a little green stuff scarf for our water elemental and just wrap that around the back of the skull. like so. Afterwards, we're just taking our X-Acto blade and we're going to cut off any excess that we have and try to push it together. And then we're just going to start working our X-Acto blade in and making some transitions. Again, you can use water for this to make your green stuff, make your tools so they don't stick. Again, you can use water or saliva or even like a Vaseline so that your tools don't stick to the green stuff. For something really small like this, honestly, just a little bit of water is all you're going to need to do it. So we're going to just start working the green stuff here with our X-Acto blade until we get a nice texture that we're happy with. Again, this part is more of a art than a science, so there's not really any hard, fast rules. Just use the edge of that blade to make some nice ripples and pull it out over the body to make a nice smooth, gradual transition. And again, just until you have a texture that you're happy with. This is a silicone brush by Game Gears, or you can even use silicone like paint mixers. I'll link, if I can find them, I'll link them to the list down below. So you can either use silicone brushes or even a silicone paint mixers to get a nice smooth transition with green stuff. They're not necessary, just something nice to have if you work with green stuff quite a bit. And we're just going to jump between our silicone and our X-Acto blade here, just work on that detail a little bit more. So we're just going to work on getting a nice smooth transition from the skull to the body of the elemental. And that's what we should look like when we're done. Then we're just going to go ahead and use that gel super glue from Gorilla Glue and attach this guy to a base. On my water elementals, I did a 25mm. I decided to do something a little bit larger for these guys because I wanted to put some actual basing on this miniature. There we go. Nothing too hard to this part. So once that's dry, we're going to take this a light tannish white, off-white. I like Deck Tan from Vallejo. It's a really nice, strong paint, a lot of pigment, and can really lay down an easy base coat, very simple. And we're just going to go ahead and paint that onto the skull and the green stuff that we've sculpted. You're going to want to make sure that green stuff's dry before you do this part. And then we're going to just kind of easily tease that out onto the clear body, not too much, and then try to feather that out into the clear body so we have a nice transition. And when we do our blood effect over this, it'll make it look like the skull is a much more deeper blood than the rest of it, and you won't have it transparent, but we should still have a nice transition from the body of the miniature into the head, and I think in the end it looked really cool when it was done. And if a little bit of the green stuff is showing through after this coat, it's not the end of the world, but we don't want to put our blood effect on straight on plastic and straight on green. We want a nice consistent color coming out through it. I also, on a test piece, did try yellow paint here because I thought it would make it pop a little bit more, but honestly in the end I just really like the white as the base. I think you get a much nicer, cleaner transition with it in effect. Right, so once that's all done, we're going to move on to our blood effect. So for the blood effect, we're just using Citadel's Blood for the Blood God. This is a great technical paint for painting gore. And really there's not too much to this step other than we're just going to smear it all over our elemental, focusing really heavily on the head and then not so much on the body, and that'll give us a nice transition from the solid gore head to a kind of almost see-through-y blood effect on the rest of the miniature. So once the miniature is all covered, we're going to go ahead and just wait for that to dry. Then once it was dried, I just did some simple basing, nothing too crazy. I just used my Vallejo basing pumice, but that's what the miniature will look like when it's all done. Right, and there you have it. Like I said, it's a very easy conversion. Anyhow, I've linked the stats that I found for this monster down below in the description. You can go ahead and download those to see if you want to start using it at your own game table. I'm also toying about maybe doing my own version of this monster with a loot table and stuff like that. I'll be sure to post that on social media when I do finally get around to making that. If you want to be sure to see that stat line come out, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Snodgrass, that's da.snodgrass, or on Facebook at Table Ready Gaming Dave. Links to both of those profiles will be down below. Just some other little bookkeeping things to kind of keep you guys all aware of what's going on around here with me. We are going to be doing some home renovations, so I might not be able to shoot at my own studio in the basement for the next few weeks. So that being said, we might not have tutorial videos on the next few, but I have been wanting to run some like behind the screens, how to play the games. I get asked all the time about tips on playing Dungeons & Dragons or being a DM, so I thought it'd be fun to maybe answer some of those common questions I get in some upcoming videos. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Dave Snodgrass. This is Table Ready Gaming. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check up here for a link to another one of our videos that YouTube thinks you like, and down here for our most recent video. Thanks again so much for watching. Have a great day.